So let's start off with a bit of a definition of artificial intelligence. I guess one of the things that, I was just speaking to a journalist out in the foyer, and we often talk about artificial intelligence like it's a thing, right? Like it's something you go out and you buy artificial intelligence or you do artificial intelligence. In terms of the broader discussion around AI, we take a very loose definition. We're talking about pretty much any time, and basically if you search on Google for artificial intelligence definition, this is what comes up. And we probably follow a pretty loose definition like this. Anytime a computer helps or augments or replaces a human is the sort of AI that we're talking about. But ultimately we define it as these 11 things, right? So you don't go out and you buy AI, you go out and you buy a building block of artificial intelligence and you put those building blocks together, either on its own, you buy a chatbot like a virtual assistant, or you buy a bunch of building blocks, you put them together and you make an intelligent process or capability or service within your business, an intelligent thing for your customers, for your employees, etc. Where we're a little different, and I guess it's worth highlighting, and I'll go through each one of these, but we actually include IoT sensor analytics in the AI space. Now, a lot of research firms don't, a lot of vendors don't. I guess we believe that in the long run, you won't be able to separate IoT from AI. That you do IoT because of the intelligent, smart, different things that you want to do. You're doing IoT because you want to automate something. More and more IoT is becoming a two-way interaction, as opposed to sensor, we get information out of it, we pull that information over here into our data center, into the cloud and analyze it, and then a week or a month or a year later we do something differently. More and more it's going to be, the sensor, an example, a factory in China today has put sensors in its machines in the factory, and the machines themselves learn, right? So the learning is happening very close to the sensors. It's not going to the cloud. It's not going to the cloud in the traditional sense of being sent, over a telecoms network off somewhere to do learning. It can immediately understand that this part here is wearing out, and therefore I can maybe reduce the air pressure or heat or temperature or something like that there, and take pressure off that particular component and put pressure on another component to make sure that the machine doesn't run down during factory hours, right? So more and more IoT is about learning from the data and actually doing something differently, right? So we believe that this analytics capability is very much going to drive a lot of the AI initiatives, particularly in the machine-to-machine space. Facial recognition, and I'll take you through the penetration rates of each one of these technologies and the future penetration rates over the next few slides. Facial recognition, there's some great examples going on here in Asia. There's the scary ones in China, where they're recognizing dissidents and stopping them from stopping them from long distance travel. You probably all heard about that recently, that I think 10,000 or 100,000 citizens in China literally can't enter the train platform because the facial recognition system censors them and stops them from, at that point, won't let them through the gate. But we've also got some hotels here in Asia starting to use facial recognition to understand their best guests and understand their pest guests. I know there are some banks in the UK who are using facial recognition and similar technologies to understand their needy customers. So if someone comes in a wheelchair or on crutches, an alert automatically gets sent to someone to go out and greet them and offer them services out in the foyer, so they don't have to roll up to the desk, which might not be at a height that's suitable for a wheelchair. Image analytics and video analytics is actually gaining a lot of traction and you'll see some of the industries where we're seeing some traction of image analytics. There's a great example in Australia of I think carsales.com.au. If you want to sell a car through this service, you put you put the photo of the back of the car on, and it will automatically tell you what car it is and what year and make it is. So it will pre-populate all that information for you, and then based off the analytics of the images of that car when it's sold, let's say it's a Golf GTI, right? It will say, we know that these are the photos that you need to put on that will increase the likelihood of it selling quickly and get you a better sales price. So they say, we'll need a front shot, we'll need one of those, you know, shot from the back seat with the chairs down of the front dashboard. We know that that helps you get a better sale price for this car, might not get a better sale price for another car. And they're using image analytics to do that. AWS in that particular example. Chatbots, virtual assistants, natural language processing. Probably don't need to talk too much about that. We've all seen a lot of that go on. Singapore had some really good early examples. Actually, what was the bus? Is it the bus auntie? Was that right? The chatbot here? Bus uncle. Sorry, it's bus uncle, right? I thought that was fantastic. So it was very simple but really effective. I really thought it was a nice little thing. Is it still running? It is, yeah. Has it changed much in the last few years? Got better? Smarter? Got older? Natural language generation, this is your Siris and your Amazon Alexas, Google, is it Google Now, is that right? Services that, again, limited adoption so far, particularly in region. Speech analytics, there's a number of governments across the region are using speech analytics to authenticate citizens, right? So you ring the tax department, it automatically identifies who you are based on your voice. I know there's an automotive firm, automotive service firm in Asia Pacific that's using speech analytics to understand how angry customers are when they call, and they're automatically, if they detect anger in the voice, let's say they leave a message, right? They call out of hours and they leave I put my Maserati in today and it's not working this evening. Then it will automatically get someone to call them and fix it sort of straight away, right? Understands high-value customers, etc. Semantic computing is a very niche area, and there's not much of it going on at all. So what semantic computing does, if you don't know what semantic computing is, I believe it's one of the least valued capabilities of AI, and I think we'll all be doing a lot more of it. It's the bit that actually makes AI smart, basically. So I'll give you an example of semantics, right? So Google Images knows that that's a cat and that's a dog, right? And it can identify that with a pretty damn high level of reliability. It might even know that they're both animals, but it doesn't know what an animal is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't know that animals have DNA and are born and die and eat this food, and it doesn't understand carnivores, herbivores, etc. It doesn't understand all those, the context, right? It's the very often used example of going to a sports website and searching for a bat. You're probably not looking for a nocturnal flying animal, right? You're looking for something to hit a ball with. And that's semantics, right? And that's something that a couple of vendors in the cloud space are doing very well, and a couple of them are not doing as well at the moment. But we believe that to make your system smarter, them having context is going to actually be a big step towards that. And I think there's going to be a real acceleration, probably more in 3, 4, 5 years' time, of the adoption of semantic computing. But it probably won't be the users in the room that do that. It'll be embedded into the platforms that you're using for AI. We include RPA in AI, and RPA is really dumb, right? A lot of you are probably doing RPA already. Like, it is a long way from intelligent, but it's actually doing a huge amount of human automation today. It's, for a lot of organizations, RPA is that first step towards artificial intelligence, which is why we do include it, because it's an important, let's call it a gateway drug into AI. Smart or intelligent process automation is machine learning and RPA, basically, sort of early days for that. Machine learning, is one of the basic building blocks of all AI. It's a basic building block of many of these other things too. And it's one of the, as you'll see in the data, one that most used services so far, particularly here in Asia. And deep learning is machine learning on steroids, which there isn't that much of going on at all. A couple of interesting little niche vendors. I know there's an interesting company in China that's using deep learning for its fraud detection capability for banks. So the point is, it can learn along the way that's what I didn't first understand was fraud. I can now understand that that's fraud. Further on, they're starting to embed some deep learning, typically from one of the big cloud platforms. So what's being used today? Now, I'm not going to go through these because it takes too long, and this is why I'm going to go for too long if I go through these. But I thought I'd leave this slide in because you'll be getting a copy of the slides later. This is just a couple of examples of companies doing it. If you want any follow-up, if you want to know who the companies are, I'd like to hear more about that one. There's a good video on the monitoring fish populations using AI. That's actually a Microsoft case study. I can point you to many of these things if you'd like to use some of these examples in your own organizations or in front of your own clients to sort of talk about the fact that this is real, it's happening, there's some smart things already going on. And these are all in Asia Pacific. So in terms of the usage so far, there's been some data released over the last 2 or 3 weeks sort of saying that somewhere around 30 to 40% of organizations are using AI. Now, what that means is 30% of organizations are using probably one of those 11 different things, right? Then no one's using, or very few are using all of those 11 different things, right? So it's when you start to break it down category by category, and I'm not sure, can you see the difference between the bars? The dark red and the light red, only just? Sorry, it's clearer on my computer screen. You start to see that actually the adoption rates are pretty low at the moment. So of any single technology, it's somewhere, the highest at the moment is machine learning and IoT sensor analytics, around 10% of businesses are using it. And this is based off our global study. We spoke to around 3,000 individuals, asking them in organizations and enterprises across the globe, and these are the responses that we got. RPA is only actually, whilst there's a lot of talk about RPA and a lot of hype about RPA, there's a lot of organizations not using RPA today. A hell of a lot of organizations are not using it today. And then you come down to things like deep learning, semantic computing, natural language generation, smart process automation. You see that we're talking in the 1% to 3% of businesses, right? So these are not highly penetrated capabilities. We are really at the beginning. We're right at the pointy end of AI implementations for most organizations across the globe. Yes, we hear a lot about it and we read a lot about it, and funding's going to them and startup funding, etc. But as I said, we're right at the beginning of these implementations for most organizations. Who are the decision makers today? Well, what's interesting with AI is how it has changed the digital decision-making landscape. As any vendors will tell you in this room, and any users will tell you, when it came to mobile, many of you didn't include your IT department at all. When it came to omnichannel, you didn't include your IT department because you didn't have to, because they just slow things down, right? That's this general perception. IT just slows things down. They have their processes and they all operate on an annual budget, so they won't be able to do it till next year, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's just go ahead and we used the term shadow IT for a while. Shadow IT got replaced with the digital team, which is just official shadow IT, right? The fast part of the business, because IT is not fast, right? So we're doing them out of those functions. AI changes it, because AI, we all need a huge amount of data, and whilst IT doesn't own the data, they manage a huge amount of that data. So AI, for a lot of organizations, makes IT relevant again, right? It means we're going to have to be working with our IT teams, selling to the IT teams as the vendors, in order to get these solutions actually working and running, because we need the data, right? Anyone who has, and you'll see that it's one of the biggest challenges of AI is access to data, basically. Anyone who's done a very simple chatbot will tell you that their first challenge was, where do I get the data from that I need to train my call center chatbot, right? That'd be their first challenge, and it was probably 3 or 4 different systems, and they probably couldn't get all the data they wanted straight away, and then IT had to go away on a specific initiative to gather all that data to bring it in to train that chatbot. So this is why IT is such an important decision maker. We've also got data around who's funding it, which is actually different than this, and who are the influencers, etc. But I don't have time to present that today. Okay, the next 3 or 4 slides I've put up just to show how different the adoption rates are of the different technologies by industry. Now, I've just picked 4 of them randomly, basically. So I'm not going through, I don't have the time today to go through all 11, but again, a lot of this information is available in reports and on the website today. There is a specific report looking at AI usage by industry. And you start to see that things like, so image analytics actually has really high penetration in retail distribution and consumer goods, and quite high penetration in resources and primary industries, right? But then we go to the chatbots and virtual assistants, and resources and primary industries has tiny penetration rates of that. The point is that, we talk about this thing called AI like it's a thing, and like everyone's doing it. But the use case for each technology by industry and even by country, when you start getting down to that level, is really different. And understanding that as a vendor selling it, or understanding it as a user implementing it to, that you might have heard that company X down the road is doing that. Well, maybe they're in a different industry or they have a different reason to do it, right? That's why they're doing it. Doesn't mean you have to be following that particular trend, or, because, that you might not get the same benefit they're getting. Interesting, virtual assistants, typically very much the B2C style organizations. RPA is actually one of the ones that's actually quite balanced across a lot of different industries. Interesting, quite low in services, except for technology services. And that's where, the technology services firms themselves are the ones who invented RPA. And actually, you'll see when I put up the vendors that actually one of the technology services firms' own software platform is one of the most adopted and fastest growing RPA platforms today. And again, machine learning, very strong in financial services, not as strong in resources or services too, And just so you know, the data here is, this is that original data of who's doing machine learning, and we had 10%, that's the proportion of everyone. What we're looking for here is, this is the proportion of businesses that have some investment somewhere in AI. Right? But what we're trying to demonstrate here is that real difference of adoption by industry, that the use cases are really different for each one of the technologies, for each one of the industries. And being successful in this space, understanding that is a really key point. The vendors is an interesting space. This is quite a controversial space, and I'll be saying some things that some people in the room might not like so much. But I'm going to really quickly go through some of this data to show the trends that are going on. So what we've asked here is, what platform do you currently use for these technologies, and what do you plan to use? So the currently use is pretty reliable data, because I know it. Plan to use is, well, we think we're going to use it. They might not, right? That's still up for grabs by other vendors. But you can see Microsoft, AWS, IBM, Google, are the big four vendors there. Interestingly, NEC is going to get some good growth in facial recognition too. They actually have one of the better facial recognition services in the market today. They're just really bad at telling people about it. Virtual assistants. Oh, look, it's the same four businesses: IBM, Microsoft, AWS, Google. Machine learning. Oh, look, it's IBM, Microsoft, Google, and AWS. The message, I guess, we see, and basically for pretty much every category, apart from the next one I'm going to put up there, it is these big four vendors. And so this is fascinating. I'm fascinated by the fact that I mentioned earlier that we are really at the beginning of the AI market. And that's typically when markets are hugely fragmented, where they're buying from thousands of different providers and no one's established leadership. And here we are, and there are already four vendors that are dominating, and I think of the current implementations of all the AI systems, they are around 65%. Of future plans, they're 70%. So these big four are going from, strong now to potentially even stronger if those plans go ahead. And that's fascinating. There's good reason for this. They are the big four cloud platforms. And you'll see when we talk through some of the challenges in a couple of slides' time around this idea that, getting access to my data, well, we want all our data in the same place, on the same cloud platform, right? We want our machine learning systems to all talk to each other and to learn from each other. We don't want to have to integrate vendor A with vendor B with vendor C, because we might change vendor A at some stage, and that's going to break the solution that vendor B and vendor C then rely on. So we're looking for consistency across our AI implementations, which is why these big four vendors are starting to dominate. Now, there are three vendors that aren't here. Oh, look, one of them's here: SAP, Oracle, and Salesforce. These are three vendors that would like to challenge this, I guess I'd argue. They're the three that are going, you know what, we're pretty big today, and we're very heavily embedded into our organizations, into our clients' business. And we want them to choose us for AI, not to move everything across to the cloud. Because we see that there are two paths to AI that businesses will take. They'll either make their current applications smarter, or they will move to the cloud and nearly rewrite their capabilities as intelligent services, right, in a cloud-based environment, which means you're not using SAP or Oracle or Salesforce, you're doing it in another environment. I made a prediction at the end of last year that I think those three vendors, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, will all make some pretty significant acquisitions in the next few years, particularly this year around AI, because I guess the point is this battle is not yet lost. They'd like to be one of those top four, or maybe that top four expanding to a 5, 6, or 7, right? So I'm not writing them off at this stage at the moment, but they need to acquire. They need to build out their AI capabilities. They need to be as strong an AI cloud platform as the other guys are. And don't get me wrong, SAP is doing a great job with Leonardo. Salesforce is doing a pretty good job with Einstein, et cetera, right? So it's not like they're not doing anything today, but I think there is an urgency in those businesses to innovate at an even faster rate as the big four cloud companies, to make sure that people will choose their company regardless of the path they want to take, right, towards AI. As I said, the only difference is this one, RPA, where we see, the big surprise in there is Accenture. Accenture actually only launched their automation platform in November last year. Yet they've had a couple of hundred companies using it already. They commercialized it in November last year. So Accenture's up there, but otherwise it's the traditional ones, and then a big chunk of others, right? The Kofaxes, et cetera, of the world are in that others bar. The fascinating thing when you look at the IPA or SPA vendors, nearly none of these are on it. So people are saying that when I make my RPA intelligent, I'm actually going to go to someone with a great machine learning capability. I'm not going to evolve my existing RPA into that intelligent process automation space. So that's a fascinating one. I was expecting to see at least a couple of these come up in that intelligent process automation piece, and it has not. So I'm going to quickly move on through some more data. For the drivers and benefits of AI, we have short-term, medium, and long-term benefits. You can see in the short term very much things like insights on the competitive landscape. That's where a lot of companies are using RPA today, actually, to screen, scrape competitors' websites to find out the products and prices, so we can make sure that, because remember, grocery stores used to have the idea that we'd send someone out once a week to fill their basket to a competitor to find out how much the competitor cost. And then they just started doing, that was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they did it online. But a human would go to the competitor's website and fill their basket and work out the price differential. Now we have a bot that does that for us. Interestingly, employee experience is actually up there above customer experience as a short-term benefit. That's sort of showing that for many organizations, there's more of an internal focus around productivity for AI than a customer-facing focus for AI. Again, this is where understanding the country and geographic trends is fascinating, because in Asia Pacific, we actually have customer experience above employee experience. Where in Asia, we're actually focusing our AI more on customer experience than those internal initiatives. In North America and Europe, it's the opposite, right? So this is, again, understanding those country and regional differences are important. And you see cost savings and profit aren't there. They're tiny little short-term focuses, and that's good. This is people saying, we're going to try this, and it's okay if it fails, and we're going to look for these benefits in the long run or medium term, and oh look, there they are, medium term. Cost savings, far and away the biggest one, so very much focus on cost savings as the medium term. Profit, so far, employee experience is still really important, and a bunch of other things in there too. And interesting in the long term, it's fascinating how they all even out, that they are all priorities, that we're doing all of these things to get benefits for AI. But again, the opportunities we're looking for in the short term are very different than the drivers and benefits that we're looking for in the long term. And understanding that as a vendor in the sales cycle, as a buyer, building your business case and building your priorities is really important. The challenges, this isn't all of them, but I've mentioned this already. I won't spend too much time, but I mentioned this idea of getting access to data is a really big challenge for people. Integrating with other AI systems. And again, this is the reason why we're automatically going to those big four cloud platforms, because the integration happens out of the box. We use the same machine learning tool and capability for all of our AI implementations versus 2, 3, 4, 5 different vendors to do it. So, finishing off with I guess, some thoughts around how our businesses or our clients' businesses are going to be changing. There has been a lot of talk around people losing their jobs from AI. The experience so far in Asia Pacific has not shown that to be true. The experience so far has actually shown, you know what? We're hiring data scientists, we're hiring more coders, we're hiring more people in technology that actually cost more and are a higher value resource than anyone that we might be replacing. And the reality is that those people in the call center that we might have even put in the business cases replacing, we've actually retained that headcount and we've moved them up to a higher value position. Right? And this is the point, I guess the decision that we all have to make, or for vendors, your clients will be making, is that what do we do when we make some sort of saving with AI? Do we reinvest that in the business, or do we bank that saving? Historically, people have reinvested that saving back in the business. Right? Think of any big cost-saving initiative that any big business has done, Singtel, Telstra in Australia, mining companies, etc. Right? Five years ago, when they went and got rid of 10,000 headcount, well, you know what? Today they probably have more people than they did back then. I heard an economist say that we constantly underestimate the ability of capitalism to create useless new jobs. And what they mean by that, I'm going to be really disrespectful here, is sort of all of us. And why do I mean that? Is because what the economist was talking about is, if you went on strike, who would notice, right? And if you're a garbage person or a teacher or, all these, a nurse, a doctor, or a surgeon, people notice when you go on strike. I know this economist talked about the only example he could find of a strike outside of these big important industries was when in Ireland in the 80s, I think, bankers went on strike for 6 months and no one cared and no one did anything. And they went back to work after 6 months with their head, tail between their legs going, oh yeah, I guess no one really cares about us. And this is the point that you have to make a decision every time you find some cost saving with AI. Do we reinvest that in our business? I'm going to argue that a lot of the time you're going to reinvest it because there are great new things you can do. And the economists use this term, useless new jobs, right? Well, one of these useless new jobs is a mobile app developer, right? A job that didn't exist 10 years ago. And my point is that for 40 years, this has been going on. The jobs of 40 years ago are very different than the jobs today. An augmented reality programmer, that job didn't exist 5 years ago, right? There's all these new roles that exist to make the customer experience better, to help us pick your brand over someone else's brand, etc. Right? And they are all important in our world in driving shareholder return, company profitability, etc. Right? So, as I said, these useless jobs that the economist was referring to was actually the guy who got himself in trouble at Davos for. Remember the guy who went? So we're hearing about climate change from David Attenborough. And 1,200 people flying in their private jets to see him talk about climate change. It was actually that guy who made this quote about it. So he makes some controversial statements. So that's my point, that you're going to have to decide what to do at each stage. My final point is this idea that we have to manage the bots. Right? This is a big challenge that we have. Who in the room has done much around RPA? Do we have a show of hands? Does anyone have more than 20 bots, let's say, in their business? Anyone with more than 20? You guys, no, I don't know. It's, anyone will know who's done RPA. Once you get to around 20 bots, you realize you have to manage them, right? Because those bots scrape data out of this system and that screen and this database, etc. And then when that database changes, it breaks the bot. Or when that screen design changes, it breaks the bot, right? And bots get broken really easily. And these bots suddenly become important because I know, a telco in Australia has put one of these bots straight into their app that I just click this button and something happens automatically that I used to have to speak to a call center. Now that bot breaks pretty regularly, right? Because they're not managing it properly, right? And this is going to happen all across AI. These systems that take data from, from 5 different databases and applications and learn from that data and do something differently based on that outcome or create some new algorithm. When that data in the database changes, when they update that application, that'll break that algorithm, right? So we need to start managing the bots within our business, managing AI. I talk about this idea that we have HR. I like this idea of having RR. It won't take off because it's just terrible. RR sounds awful. But I call it robot resources, right? We have to manage the bots within our business. We have to feed the bots, right? We need to know what data. We need to know how to retire bots, how much bots are going to cost our business. The people who are actually really quite mature about this actually charge their bots out on a per minute or per transaction basis in the same way that humans have a cost too, right? So managing those bots is really important. And I said that was my final point. Actually, my final point was a lot of us have digital strategies, right? We have a vision of where our business is in the future. We have a vision of this smart, intelligent, automated business that's very digitally native and digitally centric. And this is something that we are moving towards as a business. I say use that same vision to guide your AI investments. So you'll have this capability, these intelligent capabilities, that things will happen automatically in that future. And then today you'll have a decision of, do we invest in this machine learning platform? Well, if that machine learning platform helps you step towards that future and that vision, then that's a good, deep investment that you want to make. I'm not saying you don't make that investment, but use this vision of the future. If that vision says, you know what, that machine learning thing you want to do might be useful today, but we're probably going to not need it in a year or 2 or 3 years' time when we move to that beautiful new future we have in plan. It doesn't mean you don't do it. It means you do it in a disposable way, right? That may be when you bring in a niche vendor or when you do an overlay, when you don't deeply integrate it. We might not make deep investments in data to make that a really smart system. So my point is use this vision of your future, which your digital teams and your CEO are generating today or have already generated, to help to guide your AI investments. If that intelligence builds you towards that, do it well, do it deeply, make real investments in it. I'm not saying don't invest, but if it's not going to get you towards that future, think of it as a disposable technology, right? Find something on the web that might help you today, tomorrow, a month, 2 months, and then you can just switch it off when you no longer need it. And that means you can do things quickly too, right? I say this because I know people have made deep investments in chatbots. Right? It took them a year to integrate, implement, learn, etc. And then they've switched it off after 6 months when they moved to another platform because suddenly that other platform had a chatbot automatically integrated into it and they no longer needed that separate one. Right? So they did 12 months of work which they threw away unnecessarily. If they'd known in advance, they could have just, as I said, done a 6-week implementation and got it running quickly. But I have gone over time. I apologise about that. I'm available afterwards for any questions. I'll be on the panel or feel free to reach out on email with any follow-up questions. Thank you.